been so funny. So our first reader today is Paul Richardson. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paul Richardson, and I'm going to read a passage from my book, Echoes of Navarre. This is the first book I've written and published, and it's an espionage thriller. Now, it's called an Alex Spellman novel, but this passage is to do with his partner facing up to her fears. So, as Deanna reached the bottom stair, she felt around for a light switch and found it round the corner on the wall to her left. She flicked it on and waited for the room to illuminate. The strip lights flickered, casting brief flashes of light over the murky room. What she saw in the strobing light made her draw breath. It looked just as if the floor was writhing and moving, alive with something. As she concentrated on the image in front of her, she realised that the floor of the basement was covered in a layer of water, and in this water were black objects, moving incessantly from one place to another. Her heart sank. Rats. She hated rats. But she could see where she now needed to go. The power grid controls she was looking for was on the far wall. All she needed to do was cross the floor and shut off the grid for the building. It took her a few moments to build up the gumption to begin the short crossing, knowing that in reality the rats were more afraid of her than she of them. But that didn't make it any easier. The thought that they would attack her and begin taking chunks out of her ankles, running up her clothes and nipping at her fingertips, kept jumping to the front of her mind. She had read James Herbert's Rat trilogy too often as a child, and now she was regretting it. As she waded over to the power bank, in the brief flickers of light, she could see in actual fact that the rats were clearing a path for her, and she relaxed slightly at the realisation. She approached the grey metallic boxes lining the wall and realised she didn't know the first thing about what she should be doing. If her fuse box at home was anything to go by, all she needed to do was pull the switches down to turn them all off. With sudden realisation, she knew that cutting the power to the building meant cutting to the power to the room where she now stood, a thought that filled her with icy dread. No matter, it could not be avoided. She would need to get her bearings and know exactly where to head once the power was cut. She looked back to the stairwell, noticing that the rats were now swimming to and fro across the path she would soon be travelling. She felt nausea rise in her chest at the thought. It was silly, she knew, but humans must have an instinctive fear of vermin for good reason. Deanna began pulling the switches. Each box had an arm in the upright position, so she started at one end and pulled each one down as she walked along the bank of cabinets, not knowing which one would be the one to plunge her into darkness. She found herself holding her breath every time she pulled the arm, feeling like she was playing a type of roulette. By pure fortune, she reached the sixth cabinet and the light still flickered. She now knew this would be the one, so she looked around once more to get her bearings and then pulled the arm down. The room was now inky black. It was as if she had been plunged into a barrel of tar. The hairs on the back of her neck tingled, and she became acutely aware of every sound of movement in the room. She could hear drops of water she had not noticed before, the rats making a paddling noise as they made their journeys to and fro, and the hum of the electrical machinery was now conspicuous by his absence. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our next